The anime begins with a hero named Amakawa Haruto's childhood, when he promised to reunite with his friend, Mii-chan. They promised to get married after growing up. Around a decade later, when he was a university student in Japan, he was riding in a bus that lost control and hit a train, and he died on the spot. The memories and personality of Haruto were resurrected in Ryo's body. When Ryo wakes up, he finds himself in a room, and he can't understand his personality. Some people come into the room and start eating. Ryo is very hungry because he hasn't eaten anything for 3 days. After this, he goes outside and thinks, who is he? After that, he thinks about his family. Ryo is a boy who lives in the slums. He wants to take revenge for his mother's murder. His mother was murdered in front of him when he was 5 years old. Some girls come to Ryo and ask him if he has seen any girls there. He replies that he hasn't seen any girls. One of the girls named Celia asks him his name, and he tells her that his parents were immigrants. They also learn that Ryo has magic powers. After this, the girls go, and Ryo comes back to his house. As soon as he enters, a man attacks him fatally with a knife. The knife hits the silver coins tied around his neck, and he narrowly escapes. But that man attacks him again and again. He sees spiritual energy in a girl's form. The spiritual energy comes to him and says that if he wants to live, he will have to use her skills. Then magic came around him, and he became more powerful due to magic and his current memories of Haruto. He attacks the man and defeats him due to their dueling personalities. After defeating them, he sees a princess. The princess tells him to take her to her castle. When she sees blood around her, she faints. Ryo takes princess outside when the same girls come, and Christina slaps Ryo. They think that Ryo kidnapped the princess, but Ryo was trying to save her. They take Ryo to the castle and oppress him for telling them the truth. Then the princess wakes up and tells her that Ryo saved her. They tell soldiers that Ryo is innocent. Kelia and Vanessa come to Ryo, and Ryo asks them why they take pity on an orphan like him. Then he falls, and Celia heals him with her healing magic. When Ryo wakes up, Celia tells him that the king has called him to his palace. Then, after a few days, Ryo reaches the king's palace, where the princess is saying, that's the hero who saved her. Celia asks Ryo if he knows how to communicate or learn, and Ryo says no. Then she says that she will coach him after class, and Ryo thanks her. Celia takes Ryo to class and introduces him as a new student. Ryo introduces himself, and he estimates that the whole class doesn't like him. Celia teaches the class. She is a magic teacher at such a young age. Then after school, Ryo goes to Celia's room and calls her, who is busy at work. She takes Ryo to her room and says that she will start teaching him. When Ryo enters Celia's room, he is stunned to see the condition of her room. Celia says hesitantly that she will clean her room after some time. Then she starts teaching Ryo. Celia was surprised to see Ryo's performance. She asks him if he doesn't know how to learn and how he can solve these questions. Ryo says he learned something from her mom, but in reality, he can do this because of Haruto. Ryo tells Celia that his mother died in an accident. Ryo says to himself in his brain, he wants to take revenge on his mother. After a few days, Ryo does his sword practice, and all the students are surprised to see his skills in just a few days. But he can do this because of Haruto. Ryo is doing very well in sword fighting as well as in their studies. Other students don't like him and feel jealous of him. Celia and Ryo are talking, and Celia says to Ryo that he is doing very well. 4 years have passed since the swordsman teacher announced the names of 4 students as swordsmen, and they also got a chance to become knights. Ryo is also one of them, and other students are jealous of him. Ryo and Celia arrange books in Celia's room. Celia tells him that he will become a knight, but Ryo says he wants to become an adventurer, explore the world, and take revenge on his parents. Ryo also tells her that he left that place after graduation. Celia tries to convince him after hearing this because she likes him. The day of the tournament arrived, and the announcer announced the name of Ryo for the fight. Ryo fights with the royal guard and wins the match. Celia thinks while seeing the exam paper that Ryo will go back to his village after graduation, and she can't meet him again. Then Celia teaches the students and says to check their spells. A student stands up and says some students can't use magic values because they don't belong to royal families. Ryo understands that he is talking about him, but he ignores him. After class, the student says to Ryo that he is a worm-polluted drain. Celia hears this and threatens him. The student is afraid of Celia. Princess also sees this. When she goes to Ryo for help, her sister comes and says to Princess that Ryo doesn't need to cross his limits. Tasked to cross the forest in a limited amount of time is given to Ryo and his class. A student says that he is their guardian because he knows about the shortcut. A girl disagrees with them and says they may be punished for that, but they ignore her. Then a student comes to Ryo and asks him to carry their baggage. The princess comes to him for help, but he doesn't get any help from her. When they are walking in the forest, they see a goblin group and fight with them. Ryo is thinking of standing there when a student tells him to go behind them. An unknown person behind the tree is standing and says that the boy observed his presence. Ryo and his class reach a mountain, and there is no way left. All the students blame the boy who told them the shortcut. Suddenly, they see some demons coming there. The monsters directly hit the student and push the princess, and she falls from the mountain. Rio jumps from the mountain to save the princess. Rio is alive and manipulates his power. Then students see a big monster who comes very close to Princess Flora, but Rio breaks his hand into pieces and kills him. A mysterious person also sees their fight and says this person is very special. The general proves in the academy that Rio is mendacious and may be dangerous for a princess. Then Rio enters Celia's room and says he wants to go because the generals and others want to implicate him in all this. He says to Celia that he will write letters to her with the name Haruto. Rio is traveling very fast to his hometown. He stays in a town to take some rest because he feels that someone is chasing him. Then he goes to a shop and orders 1 bowl of noodles. Then he goes to the market to buy noodles for traveling. He gets help from Miss Guild, who buys something for him. While drinking tea, he remembers Celia, who liked tea very much. Then he posts a letter for Celia with Haruto's name. When he goes back, Miss Guild's friend tells her that she likes Rio very much. Miss Guild says there is nothing like that. Rio goes on his way quickly into the forest when he sees someone lying there. When Rio comes to the person, he sees that she is a beast woman who attacks him, but Rio dodges the attack. They fight with each other, and the beast girl thinks that he is very powerful even though he is a human. Then Rio attacks her, and she faints. Rio notices a chain around her neck. He understands the chain is used to control slaves. When Beast Girl wakes up, she sees her chain. Rio asks who sent her, and she narrates her past story, saying that she is the girl who died in the same bus in which Haruto died. She reincarnated in a prison as a Beast Girl, and her name is Latifa. She meets with the person who always teases Rio. He says that he is Latifa's elder brother but treats her as a slave. Latifa says to Rio that she doesn't know any of them except for one, and she tells Rio about his appearance. Rio understands she is talking about whom. Then Rio says to her that if she attacks him, he will kill her. Rio tells her to go out in the east, but she wants to go with him. Rio says he doesn't trust her because she already attacked him, but she says that anyone who's not behaved well with her treats her like a slave. That's why she wants to go with Rio. Rio agrees to take her with him quickly. Then they start their journey. Rio says his name to her, and she also tells him her name. Then Rio gives her a sandwich to eat, and she is very excited to see it. Then Celia receives a letter from Rio and becomes very happy. At night, Rio hears voices and can't sleep. He comes out to check on the voice and sees a wolf in front of him. When Rio comes out to check on his voice, he sees a flashlight. Suddenly, someone attacks him and disappears. Some beast girls attack Rio, and he asks, how's his courage to kidnap a beast girl and treat her as a slave? Rio tries to understand them, but they attack him and he faints. Rio sees a girl in his dream and asks about her. She says she is just attached to him. When Rio wakes up, he sees himself in a castle, and Latifa comes and hugs him. An old beast girl comes there and apologizes for their mistake. The 4 girls apologize to Rio for their misbehavior and attack on them. Rio forgives all of them after seeing them upset. The old lady shows her village and things to Rio on a tree, and then Rio is sitting in a room with 5 others. These are the leaders of the village, and Rio apologizes that he has to face problems due to them. Rio tells them not to worry, saying that it's not their fault. Then they say to Rio that he can choose any girl from their village for his reaction, but he says no. Then a spirit girl appears there, whose name is Tree Spirit. She holds Rio's hands and says to him excitedly that his spirit power is too strong and she can feel it from the mountains. The Tree Spirit asks about the spirit he hides in himself. Rio says he doesn't know anything about it, and the Tree Spirit says it's very strange because he has magic beyond his level and nobody observes it. Rio thinks that everyone tells him he doesn't have any powers because he doesn't belong to a royal family. The other people stand up and say he has a spirit. She replies not a spirit, but a very powerful human-shaped spirit within him. Then Latif brings Rio to her home, and a girl comes and says to Rio that he has to live with them. Then the old lady comes there and says to Rio, if he doesn't have any problems, then permit them to live together. Rio has many sweet memories in this village. One day, the villagers celebrate a festival to thank the Tree Spirit. Latifa is also very excited. Then the mysterious person reaches a cave and steals an egg to give to his companion. Rio has been in the village for a year, and he has completed his training there. Rio is sitting with Latifa when 2 girls come to him and say that he always sits with Latifa and doesn't talk with them. Latifa says she likes him because Rio is her brother, and she protects Rio from those flirty girls. Then the old beast lady comes there and says to Rio that Latifa is very happy, and she has a cute smile. Then she asks if he will tell her about the matter, and Rio says he will tell her very soon. 2 people are talking with each other, and the one who wants to kill Rio is Rias. Few dragons come to Rias. He says he knows that they can find Rio. Rio goes on a walk with Latifa and asks if she is happy in the village. She says yes because she has everything and a brother, and then he tells her that he is leaving the village. She asserts that she will go with Rio, but he denies it. The chief of the village tells people that he has a feeling for dragons. He asks to go into the forest to check how the dragons get there. On the other side, Rhea steals all the eggs of dragons to make a dragon's army. All the beast girls reach the forest for an inquiry, and then they see Reese's griffin. They descend near the griffin, and Reese asks the beast girls why they came there. Reese's friend tries to run, and Beast Girl asks about the egg, but he runs. A big dragon comes there, and the beast girls understand that this is the egg of that dragon. Reese is going to the village, and the dragon is behind him. The beast girls say they have to stop the dragon, because he will destroy the village. After teleporting all the eggs, Rhesus broke the red bill, and his friend died. He falls near Latifah. When the dragon sees his egg, he attacks Latifah. The news of this incident circulates in the whole village, and when Rio hears it, he goes to Latifah for help. Other beast girls are surprised. The next morning, Rio says to Latifah that he has to go and tell her that he also reincarnated like her in Tokyo. The day of Rio's departure has arrived, and the villagers have given him armor and a sword. An old beast lady provides him with food for traveling. 2 weeks have passed since Rio traveled to his hometown, and finally, he reached it. He sees some farmers working in fields and asks about the leader's home. A girl stands up and says she is her granddaughter, and he goes with her to the leader's home. He tells the leader that he is a traveler and wants to ask some questions. Then Rio tells her mother's and father's names. She is surprised to hear the names of his parents, so she tells the girls to go out from there. Then she tells Rio that his father is her son, and he is her grandson. Rio is surprised to know that an orphan like him has a grandmother there, rather than taking him to his parents' grave. Rio says that while praying, he finally reaches his hometown and meets with his grandmother. His grandmother tells him that Ruri is his cousin, and in the morning, when Rio says good morning to his grandmother, Ruri also comes there. Rio helps the grandmother with household work. At lunchtime, 2 people come to the village leader's house. One of them, Shin, asks about Rio. Their grandmother tells them he is their cousin. Shin and others eat meals made by Rio and like them. Grandmother comes to Shin and asks him to take Rio with him whenever he goes hunting, and Shin agrees. The next day, they go hunting. Rio hunts very well, but Shin feels jealous as he cannot hunt anything. When they come back, Rio thinks of taking a bath with his magic spell and goes in the bath to wash. Ruri comes, and when they are talking, Shin comes there and feels jealous of Rio, as he is the best at everything. He tells him to remove the bath as it takes place. Grandmother tells Rio that they have to transport some baggage, and he could help her as the transport leader. Some people are talking about Shin's sister. Shin grates at him and punches him, but he falls upon him. The village leader comes there, and the person says to her that these girls are his own. Shin is sorry that he cannot save his sister. After some days, the same person comes into Ruri's room. The other girl wakes up and cries for help. Rio comes there when he sees this. He remembers that the same thing happened to his mother. He grates at the man and beats him aggressively. When they are going to the capital, the grandmother tells the officer to give strict punishment to these users. Then she gives a letter to the officer and says to give it to their master privately. When they reach the capital, their senior goes to report the person. Rio also goes with him. Then they go to the hotel and order food. Rio likes it very much, and Shin apologizes for his rude behavior. Then Rio takes Shin's sister with him for food, and they go to a shop and buy a pin. The shop owner tells them she will give them a discount. Seo thanks Rio for her help, and Rio says don't worry, it's his responsibility. Then Rio goes away from there, and the shop owner says to Seo that she doesn't miss a chance because many girls are behind him. A person takes the girl with him, and Rio helps the girl back to another girl. The senior is sitting with the master and gives him a letter. When the master reads the letter, he asks the senior if he will meet with Rio. Senior replied yes. The master says to take him to Rio. When Rio reaches home with the Sayo, Shin asks for food and they reply yes. Shin asks about her pin and Rio runs from there. The master and his wife come to meet Rio and tell him that his mother is a princess there. Rio is shocked to learn about his mother, and the master also tells him about his father, Zen, who was a very brave man and helped them on the battlefield. The king was happy with him and gave him a sword, and Zen became the royal guard of Yami, his mother. They spent more and more time with each other. A person who liked Daie tried to rape her, but Zen came there and saved her. Ayami told him they could not get married because he didn't belong to the royal family, and they got a court marriage. King chased them but could not find them. The master and his wife start weeping while telling the story to Rio. He goes with them to the royal capital to meet the king and queen. The queen says to Rio that he looks like his mother. He says he doesn't know about his father's death, but he remembers that his mother was killed by the best friend of his father. He fights with his master and defeats him. Grandmother tells Ruri that Rio is a prince, and she thinks they are making her a fool. And then grandmother tells her that her father is a royal guard and her mother is a princess. Then Rio tells his grandmother that he's going back, and he stays there for his grandmother. In the morning, Rio comes to Ruri and calls her, and Seo feels jealous of Ruri. Rio helps her grandmother in the fields. does housework, and goes hunting. He also goes to Sayo and tells her that he is going back, and she begins to weep but hides her tears from Ryo. When her brother learns that she likes Ryo, he goes there and asks him not to leave the village. Sayo comes there and takes her brother with her, which Ryo cannot understand. Sayo works very hard in spirit technique, but her brother cannot understand why she is doing the practice. The next day, there is a festival in the village. The master and his wife also come there. Ryo thanks his wife and says that if they both have not, then he cannot know about his parents. Sayo tells Ryo in the forest that she loves him a lot and requests to take her with him, but Ryo denies that he cannot take her with him. Shin and Master are also seeing this. When Ryo is going back, his grandmother tells him to meet with Sayo. Before going, and Ryo sees that Sayo is standing at the village gate. Sayo tells Ryo that when he goes back from the forest, the master comes to her and advises Sayo not to give up. Then she says she works very hard and waits for Ryo, and Ryo goes away. He reaches out to Latifa, and she welcomes him, says that she misses him a lot, and hugs him. Village heads come there, and he goes with them and tells them that he is there for a short time. Ryo tells her that he met with her grandmother. Latifa tells Ryo to take her with him to visit her grandmother, but he says sorry to her. Then Ryo and Latifa meet with Alma and the other girls. Ryo tells them they are looking older now, and Latifa stops them to talk with Ryo. Then, at night when Ryo is sleeping, he feels someone with him. He sees a girl with him and cries loudly. Latifa and others come there. Latina and all the others come to Ryo and ask him what he is doing with the girl. Ryo tells them they have a misunderstanding. Ryo asks the girl about his presence in his room, and she says that she doesn't know anything. She is his spirit. All the others ask Ryo why she calls him Haruto. She says to Ryo in her mind, "Don't worry, she never told them about Haruto." They are talking in their minds with each other, and Latifa asks why they are silently watching each other. Alma and the other beasts say to take her to the tree spirit to give her name so she can help them, and the spirit agrees to go with them. Then, she uses her magic and wears clothes. Everyone is stunned to see the magic. Ria says she's awesome after looking at her. Ryo remembers Ayase, a childhood friend of Amakawa Haruto, to whom he promised to get married, but Haruto died in an accident and reincarnated in Ryo's body. Tree Spirit and others see Ashia and say it's a different spirit, and ask about his power. She says she has all spirit powers. She also tells them she connects Ryo to Haruto. Ryo makes the excuse that everyone knows him by the name Haruto, so she calls him by this name. After this, both of them fight in one place, and both of them are not defeated by each other, creating a huge storm. The old saying goes that if they fight for a while and don't stop attacking each other, then this village would have ended there. Tree spells tell Aishia that she will teach her about the elements and spirits. Aishia thanks the tree spirit. In the evening, Ryo comes to the head of the village and thanks them for making a home that he can carry anywhere. The head tells him that there is also a bathhouse in it. When Ryo is taking a bath, Latifa comes there, and they are talking about Japan. The next day, when Ryo goes back with Aishia, the village people again give him gifts. The head gives him a thing with which he can change the color of his hair. After this, he goes to meet Celia. Celia also misses Ryo. When they reach there, they hypnotize a person from the day before and ask him where the librarian is from. He tells them that today she is marrying Lord Charles. Ryo is very surprised to hear this. Ryo asks the person why she is getting married to Charles. The person says that some blame is put on Celia's family, and they are doing this forcefully. Ryo says he has to meet with Celia, but he can't because there is very strict security in the royal palace. Ashia says she can enter the royal palace without showing herself to anyone, and says she can also identify Celia. Then she enters the royal palace. Celia and his father are sitting with Charles, and Charles tells Celia's father that he managed all the wedding arrangements and asks if he calls him his father. Celia's father feels sorry for his daughter's marriage to Charles because he knows about his nature. Two girls of the royal family run away, and the blame is put on Celia's family. That's why they have to do this. Celia is sitting in her room and drinking tea. Ashia comes to know through her magic that Celia is sitting in a room and missing Ryo. Ryo comes there and she hugs him. Ryo asks why she's getting married to a man who doesn't behave well with people. Celia tells Ryo to get married to her, but Ryo cannot reply, and Celia says she is just making fun. Then she asks Ryo to go. After this, she cries loudly. Ashia thinks about what to do. Ryo is upset and wants to talk with Celia for a while. Charles is talking with the person who kidnapped the princess and asks the person to meet with him at night. But the person says no because it's his first night of the wedding. Then the person observes the presence of a spirit. When Celia is getting ready, Charles calls her and says that she is looking very pretty. Charles met her as his first wife. His first wife tells Celia to be within her limits, and then Christina comes along. Charles's first wife asks to talk, but the princess wants to talk with Celia alone. Celia and Princess Christina are drinking tea, and Christina says sorry to Celia because she has to get married to Charles because of her. Celia says don't worry, Then Christina again says sorry and says that she has a despoiled smile on her face. When Celia is going with Charles and Ishia tells her that Rio is standing at her left side, she gets happy and starts weeping. Charles asks the reason and Celia says nothing. Charles gives his hand to Celia, and she thinks she is just like a doll who doesn't have feelings. She's going to hold her hand out to Charles. She looks back and Rio is coming to her. All the soldiers, magicians, and spirit techniques in the army come to stop him, but he defeats all of them very easily. Rio comes in front of them, gives a punch to Charles, and puts a knife on Celia's neck. He poses as if he wants to kidnap Celia. All of them cannot recognize Rio because he has changed his hair color. Rio talks with Celia in his mind. She asks why he came there. He asks Celia if she wants to get married to Charles, who is not a good person. At his insistence, she is ready to run with him and feels sorry for his dad as she puts him in trouble. Spirit techniques people come there. He jumps over the people. Charles is just crying there. Seditions attack Rio, but he makes a shield, and the attack falls upon them. The villain thinks that he is very powerful and uses a spirit arc. He says he knows that person and he is not another, but Rio, who has become much more powerful. Rio goes to Ishia and gives Celia to her, and says they will meet at the place that he tells Ishia. Celia asks where he is going, and he says he has something to do. The soldiers see him and give signals that Celia is not with him. Then he gets down on the earth and fights with soldiers. Then Emerald comes there and they fight with each other. Then Emerald uses his powerful technique on Rio, but he disappears using his teleportation technique. Emerald doubts that the attack doesn't hit him because he disappears from there. Then Rio goes to the mountain with Celia and Ishia, and Celia hugs him. It seems like a happy ending, but suddenly a light comes on and some people teleport there. Ishia asks Naruto to help them. Rio tells people to leave them, but they do not agree, so Rio kills all of them. They both thank Rio for helping them, and they talk about their other fellow. Rio goes to the girl for help. When he sees the girl, she is Ayase, a childhood friend of Haruto, to whom he made promises to get married. She thanks Rio for her help and tells him her name. Rio is shocked to see her.